This is Got the Fix-It Guy. Today we're dealing with a Series 80 Whirlpool washer that needs to have a new motor coupler. So we're going to unplug it first. So we set it for spin. We can hear the motor firing up, but we hear like a clicking sound and it won't spin. So that means the motor coupler is broken. So I'm going to take a pretty fast approach. I'm just going to pull the machine away from the wall at maybe 2.5 feet and lean it back to about 45 degrees. This is the motor coupler, and this one is loose and wobbling around, and that shouldn't be the case. So I think part of the plastic is cracked. So to replace it, we're just going to take the motor off, and it's pretty easy to do. This is a really cool machine, easy to work on. I'm going to pull these spring clips off of this white water pump. Pull off the one on the bottom, and then I got one on the top too. You can use a screwdriver to help you. Once you get the clips off, you can grab the water pump and just pull it off of the motor shaft. So just pull it towards you, toward the front of the washer. And then I'm just going to push that off to the side so it's not in my way. And again, the machine is all open here at the bottom, so it's easy to get to. To get to the bottom, we had to lean it back against the wall. And now I want to take off two connectors that are holding the motor arm. First I'm going to remove some of the motor connectors too. So these are some just 1/4-inch screws that are holding on these spring clips that hold on the motor. So I got to get these little screws off first. And I'll pull off this modular connector that brings power to the motor. And then I have a pretty big capacitor here that has a couple of wires connected to it, and then one more little modular connector I just disconnected. And I'm going to use some pliers to help me pull off these leads that are on the capacitor. And once that's off, then there's no more things that are connected to the motor, so I can pull the motor off of where it's connected to the transmission plate. So we've got the two 1/4-inch screws off of the clips that hold on the motor, and now I'm just going to pry off these clips using a standard head screwdriver. This is the one on the bottom. And then I'll support the motor while I pry the one off on top. The top one's all loose now. And usually the motor will just come right off. This one's still kind of stuck, so I'm going to use a standard head screwdriver to pry in between the transmission plate and the motor to kind of loosen it up so I can get the motor off. But usually though, it'll just come off with gravity. I'll give it a little nudge. Motor's kind of heavy, so maybe support it with your strong hand, or maybe use two hands, or have someone give you a hand. Wheel it off. And now I can get to the motor coupler. So here's the shaft on the transmission. Here's the shaft on the motor with the motor coupler. Here's the old one. So it had a cracked piece of plastic, and then the rubber piece that absorbs the shock was really deteriorating and almost ready to fall apart. And these usually get messed up when the machine is overloaded, like when you try to wash something really big like a blanket or bathroom mat. Here's the part number for the motor coupler. You can get these at Amazon, or I get my parts at Reliable Parts. And now I just pounded this plastic piece onto the motor shaft by using a socket and a small hammer. So I want to get it down flush where it's flush with the motor shaft. Now I just put on the rubber piece that helps absorb shock. Here's the old one right next to the new one. So the old one is just really worn out. You can see the rubber holes are like 4 times bigger than the one on the new motor coupler. This is probably the original one, maybe 15 years old. So now the plastic piece that goes on the transmission shaft is on, but I want to knock it on with a socket to get it nice and flush. So I'm going to put a socket on there and then hit it with a small hammer to get it further down. So we got that done, and I'm going to put my motor back on now. I'm going to just take my time and wiggle it back on. This is a little bit tricky. So we got the bottom clip back on. I just used a heel of hand to pound it up into position. That's on. Hook up my wire connectors, 2 for the capacitor. Just going to wiggle them on. Make sure you don't touch that capacitor, the 2 metal leads, with your hand. Just make sure that you're just putting the terminals on. Capacitors can give you a shock. They're like a powerful battery. Put the modular connector back, and then there's a big modular connector that I'll put back on the motor. So the symptom is when it goes to spin, you can hear the motor active, you hear a ticking sound, but it won't spin. And that's because there's no longer a connection between the motor and the transmission. So now we're going to put the water pump back on, and we got to get it back over the shaft, but you may have to turn the shaft so that it fits correctly back into the water pump. So that's nice and snug. That's back on there. And we're going to put the 2 spring clamps back on that hold the water pump to the motor. There's the top one. There's a little slot that you push it into, and then you turn it, and then you can use spring tension to put it up on there. And I'll put the 1/4-inch screws back in. Top and the bottom. Plug it back in, take it for a test drive, set it for spin. I'm going to open the lid so I can look, and I'll push in on the lid switch so I can see it. It's spinning nice. So hope that helped you, and please subscribe when you get a chance. Thanks for watching.